Hey y'all. My name is Carol Ann Merritt, and I'm from Clarksville, Tennessee. A small city, not quite country, not quite big town. The kind of place where front porches still get used and people still bring casseroles when somebody's going through something hard. I'm 30 years old. I'm a woman who has spent most of her life trying to understand something that maybe was never meant to make sense. And today, I'm finally ready to talk about it. I want to tell you about my mother. About the 4 kids she left behind. About the man who raised us alone and never once made us feel like we weren't enough. And about the day she came back, 30 years later, and the secret she brought with her that turned everything I thought I knew completely upside down. This is not an easy story for me to tell. But I've learned that the hard stories are usually the ones most worth telling. So get comfortable. Take your time with this one. Because I'm going to take mine. It was a Tuesday in March. I know that because my daddy always said March was the cruelest month our family ever lived through. And after everything, I think he was right. I was 5 years old. My brother Danny was 7. Marcus was 9. And our oldest, Robert, we always called him Bobby, he was 11. 4 kids under one roof, and a mama who had been restless for as long as any of us could remember. I don't have a lot of clear memories from being 5. But I have that morning. I have it like a photograph that never faded. I woke up early because I heard sounds downstairs. Drawers opening and closing. The soft thud of a suitcase being dragged across the hardwood floor. I climbed out of bed in my little pink pajamas and padded down the stairs. And I saw her in the hallway. She was wearing her red coat. The nice one she saved for church and special occasions. Her hair was done. Her lipstick was on. She looked like she was going somewhere important. She saw me at the bottom of the stairs, and she froze for just a second. And I said, "Mama, where are you going?" She set down her suitcase. She came over to me, and she crouched down to my level, and she looked at me, really looked at me, and she said, "Be a good girl, Carol Ann." That was it. That was all she said. She kissed me on the forehead. She picked up her suitcase. She walked out the front door. And I stood at that window in my pink pajamas, and I watched her go down the driveway and turn onto the street and disappear. She never looked back. My daddy found me still standing at that window 20 minutes later. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just picked me up and held me against his chest, and I could feel him breathing real slow and steady, like he was trying to hold himself together from the inside. "Where did Mama go, Daddy?" He rubbed my back and said, "I don't know, baby, but we're gonna be okay." He said that a lot over the years that followed, and somehow, he made it true. My father's name was Thomas Earl Merritt, Tommy to his friends, Daddy to 4 kids who needed him more than he probably ever expected to be needed. He worked at a printing factory just outside of Clarksville. 6 days a week, sometimes 7 when they needed overtime. He was not a wealthy man. We were not a wealthy family. But we were fed and clothed and housed. And we knew, every single day, that somebody loved us. Daddy was not the kind of man who talked a lot about feelings. He was from that generation, you know. The kind of man who showed love through showing up. Through packing 4 school lunches every morning before the sun came up. Through sitting in the bleachers at Bobby's baseball games even when he'd worked a double shift. Through braiding my hair before school, even though Lord knows he didn't really know what he was doing. He'd watched YouTube tutorials on his old phone until he figured it out. I think about that a lot. My big, rough-handed daddy watching hair braiding videos on his phone so his little girl could go to school looking cared for. If that's not love, I don't know what is. We didn't talk about our mother much. Daddy didn't speak badly about her. Not to us, not ever. When we asked questions, which we did less and less as the years went on, he'd say something like, "Your mama had her own battles. That wasn't about y'all." And then he'd change the subject. As a kid, that answer frustrated me. As a grown woman, I understand it was the most loving thing he could have done. He refused to poison us against her. He carried whatever bitterness he had privately, so we didn't have to carry it too. That man was something else. He really was. Growing up without a mother is its own particular kind of quiet ache. It's not always loud. It's not always dramatic. It's just present. Like a chair that's always empty at the table. You stop expecting someone to sit in it, but you never stop noticing that it's there. For me, the hard moments came in specific places. Mother's Day at school, when every other kid was making cards, and I was sitting there trying to figure out what to do with mine. My 5th grade teacher, bless her heart, let me make mine for Daddy. I wrote, "Happy Father's Day and Mother's Day," across the top in purple crayon. He kept it on the refrigerator for years. My first period, I was 12 years old and scared half to death, and it was Bobby, my 17-year-old brother, who sat outside the bathroom door and talked me through it, because Daddy was at work, and Bobby had apparently done some research because that's just the kind of big brother he was. My junior prom, getting ready alone in my room, no mama to zip up my dress or tell me I was beautiful. My high school graduation, scanning the bleachers for a face I knew wasn't going to be there. These are small moments, maybe, but they stack up. They accumulate into this quiet understanding that you are navigating the world without a particular kind of anchor that other people have, and you have to build your own steadiness from scratch. My brothers and I became each other's anchors. We were tight. The kind of tight that only comes from going through something hard together. Bobby was protective to the point of being overbearing sometimes. Marcus was the funny one who made everything lighter. Danny was sensitive and sweet and could always tell when I was hurting before I said a word. And Daddy held us all together like the frame of a house. Invisible in the sense that you don't notice it until you really look, but holding everything up the whole time. We were okay. We genuinely were. But there was always that question underneath everything, like a stone at the bottom of still water. Why did she leave? We got word of her occasionally over the years. Not from her directly. But Clarksville is not that big, and people talk. We heard she'd moved to Nashville. Then we heard she'd remarried, some man named Gerald. Nobody we knew. We heard she'd had another child, a daughter. That one stung a little, not gonna lie. To hear that she had gone and started over somewhere else. Made a new family. While we were back in Clarksville figuring out how to be a family without her. Bobby took it the hardest. He was old enough when she left to understand what was happening in a way the rest of us weren't. He carried a kind of anger toward her that he wore quietly, but that never really went away. He never talked about her if he could help it. If her name came up, his jaw would tighten and he'd find something else to do. Marcus dealt with it through humor, deflecting anything heavy with a joke. I didn't fully understand until I was older that the jokes were armor. Danny cried about it sometimes, even as a grown man. He was just built that way, more open, more willing to sit with the hurt. I always respected that about him. Me, I went through phases. There were years I was angry, years I was sad, years I convinced myself I didn't care at all. Years I'd see a woman about my mother's age doing something tender for her daughter in public, fixing her hair, squeezing her hand, and have to look away fast before something cracked open in me. I went to therapy in my mid-20s. Best decision I ever made. My therapist, Dr. Anita Webb, helped me understand that my feelings about my mother didn't have to be simple. I didn't have to choose between forgiving her completely and hating her forever. Real life lives in the complicated space between those two things. I was starting to find some peace with that. Starting to build a life that felt full and steady on its own foundation. And then she called. I was 29 years old when my phone rang on a Wednesday evening in April. I didn't recognize the number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Carol Ann? I knew the voice immediately. Don't ask me how. I hadn't heard it since I was 5 years old. But something in the body remembers things the mind can't explain. My stomach dropped straight to the floor. Yes, I said, just that one word. It's your mama. I sat down on my kitchen floor. I don't even remember deciding to sit. My legs just went. She sounded older, obviously. A little rougher around the edges. But she also sounded nervous, genuinely nervous. Her voice had a shake in it that I hadn't expected. She said she'd been trying to work up the courage to call for a long time. She said she thought about us, about all four of us, more than I probably knew. She said she was sick. Nothing immediately life-threatening, she clarified quickly, but serious enough that it had made her take stock of her life and the things she'd left undone. She said she wanted to meet, all of us, if we were willing. She said there were things she needed to tell us, things she should have said a long time ago. I was quiet for so long that she said, "Carol Ann, are you still there?" "I'm here," I said. "Will you think about it?" I told her I would. I hung up. And then I sat on my kitchen floor for probably another 20 minutes just staring at the wall. Then I called Bobby. Bobby's reaction was exactly what I expected. "No," he said. Flat, immediate. "Absolutely not." I told him what she'd said, that she was sick, that she had things to tell us, that she wanted to meet. "I don't care," he said. "She made her choice 30 years ago. She doesn't get to decide she wants a relationship now because it's convenient for her." I understood where he was coming from. I really did. But I also heard something underneath the anger. The same thing I always heard underneath Bobby's anger about this. Hurt. Deep, old, 11-year-old boy hurt that had never fully healed. Marcus was more measured. "I mean, if she's sick, maybe there's something she genuinely needs to get off her chest. That doesn't mean we owe her anything, but I wouldn't be opposed to hearing what she has to say." Danny wanted to meet her. Right away, no hesitation. "She's still our mother, Carol Ann. Whatever she did, she carried us. I want to look her in the eye at least once before one of us is gone." That hit me hard. It took 3 weeks of conversations, some of them calm, some of them loud, all of them painful, before Bobby finally agreed to come. Not because he'd softened toward her, but because Danny said, "Bobby, please, do this for me." And Bobby, for all his toughness, could never say no to Danny. We arranged to meet at a neutral place, a quiet restaurant in Nashville on a Saturday afternoon. All four of us, and her. I barely slept the night before. She was already there when we arrived, sitting in a corner booth, hands folded on the table, watching the door. She looked like my mother. That was the first thing that hit me. She looked like my mother. Older, yes. Grayer. Smaller somehow than the woman in my memory, but recognizable in a way that made my chest do something complicated. She stood up when she saw us. Her eyes went immediately to Bobby and she flinched just slightly, like she was bracing for something. We sat down. Nobody hugged. Bobby sat across from her with his arms crossed and his face closed. Marcus sat next to me. Danny, sweet Danny, sat closest to her and gave her a small nod. She said, "Thank you for coming. All of you. I know this wasn't easy." Bobby said nothing. Marcus said, "You said you had things to tell us." She nodded. She looked down at her hands for a moment, and then she looked up and she said, "Before I say anything else, I need you to know that leaving you was the worst thing I have ever done in my life. There is no excuse for it. I am not here to make excuses." Bobby made a sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite a scoff, something in between. She said, "But I am here to tell you the truth, because you deserve it. You always deserved it." And then she told us. What she said in that booth in Nashville took about an hour to get through fully. There were tears. Hers, Danny's, mine. Bobby stayed dry-eyed, but his jaw worked the whole time. Marcus stared at the table. Here is what she told us. When she left, she was not simply a restless woman who didn't want her family anymore. She was a woman in the grip of a mental illness that had gone completely undiagnosed and untreated for years. a severe depressive disorder combined with what would eventually be identified as bipolar II. In the early 1990s in a small Tennessee city, mental health was not talked about the way it is now. There was no language for what she was experiencing. There was only the crushing weight of it, and the absolute certainty, the irrational but totally consuming certainty, that her children would be better off without her. She had convinced herself, truly, deeply convinced herself, that she was destroying us by staying, that her darkness was poisoning the house, that Daddy would be able to give us a better life, a more stable life, if she removed herself from the equation. She was not right. She was sick, but she believed it with everything she had. She had not gone to Nashville and started a happy new life without a backward glance. She had spent the first several years after leaving in and out of treatment, finally getting a proper diagnosis, slowly rebuilding herself into someone functional. She had remarried. Yes. She had another daughter. Yes. But she had also spent 30 years living with the knowledge of what she had done, unable to figure out how to come back, whether she had the right to come back, whether we would ever want to hear from her. Her new husband Gerald had been the one to finally push her. "You have to try," he'd told her. "Whatever happens, you have to try." When she finished, the table was quiet for a long time. Danny reached over and put his hand over hers. She looked at him like he'd handed her something she hadn't expected to ever receive. Bobby pushed back from the table and walked outside. I watched him through the restaurant window. He stood on the sidewalk with his back to us, hands in his pockets, looking at the street. I excused myself and went out to him. He didn't say anything when I came and stood beside him. We just stood there together for a minute on that Nashville sidewalk. Then he said, "She really believed that we'd be better off? That's what she said. He stopped, started again. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." I didn't say anything. I just stood with him. "I've been angry at her my whole life," he said quietly. "I built this whole picture of her, of who she was. Cold. Selfish. Didn't care enough to stay." He shook his head slowly. "And the truth is she was sick and nobody helped her, and she made the worst decision a person can make, and she's been living inside that decision for 30 years. He rubbed his face with both hands. "That doesn't make it okay," he said. "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. But it makes it different." We went back inside. Bobby sat down. He looked at our mother across that table for a long moment, and then he said, "I'm not there yet. I want you to know that. I'm not ready to just move forward like everything is fine. I don't know if I'll ever be fully there." She nodded. Her eyes were wet. "But," he said, "I'm not going to walk away from this table and never speak to you again either. I think I need some time, and I think you owe us that time." She said, "I'll give you whatever you need, all the time in the world." That was about a year ago now. I won't sit here and tell you that everything is healed and beautiful and wrapped up in a bow. That's not how real life works. That's not how 30 years of absence works. But I will tell you where we are. Danny and our mother talk on the phone every couple of weeks. He's visited her in Nashville twice. He says it's strange and tender and complicated all at the same time. I believe him. Marcus has met her for coffee once. They talked for 3 hours. He said he doesn't know exactly what they are to each other yet, but that he's willing to find out slowly. Bobby sends her a text on her birthday. That's it for now, but he sends it. And knowing Bobby, that's not a small thing. That is actually enormous. And me? I met her for lunch last month, just the two of us. We talked about small things mostly. Her garden, my job, the Tennessee weather. Normal things, easy things, like two women learning how to be in the same space. At the end of lunch, when we were putting on our coats to leave, she said, "You look like your daddy, you know. You have his eyes." I said, "I know. He told me that my whole life." She smiled. A small, sad smile. He was a good man. The best man I knew. I hope you know that. I do, I said. He made sure of it. She nodded, and we walked out into the afternoon light. Not holding hands, not hugging, not fully anything yet, but walking in the same direction, which felt for now like exactly enough. Y'all, I've thought a long time about what this story means. What the lesson is, if there is one. And I think what I keep coming back to is this. People are not always the simple villains we need them to be when we're hurting. Sometimes the people who hurt us most were themselves in a kind of pain they didn't have the tools to carry. That doesn't excuse what they did. It doesn't erase the empty chair at the table, or the prom you got ready for alone, or the braids your daddy fumbled through because he loved you enough to try. But it does complicate the story. And complicated is closer to the truth than simple usually is. My daddy raised 4 kids alone, and never once let us feel like we were missing something we couldn't live without. That is its own kind of miracle. That man gave us everything he had. And my mother, a sick young woman who made a devastating choice and spent 30 years on the other side of it. She is trying, at 60-something years old, to find a way back into the edges of our lives. We are deciding, slowly and carefully, how much space we have for that. Neither of those things cancels the other out. Both of them are true at the same time. That's the thing about family. It's almost never one thing. It's always more. Thank you for sitting with this story today. If it touched something in you, if you've ever waited for an apology that was a long time coming, or loved someone who left, or raised children by yourself and wondered if it was enough, I see you. You are not alone in it. Leave me a comment. Tell me your story. I'll be reading. Take good care of yourselves, y'all. I'll see you in the next one.